Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Hooks and Ladders. My name is Blair Packham,
And my name is Allister Bradley.
and I would like to talk today, Allister, about repetition in songwriting.
About repetition in songwriting.
About repetition in songwriting.
About repetition in songwriting?
See, now we're crossing a line, and this is why repetition is both good and bad. It can work or it can trip you up. Why do you think some writers are resistant to using repetition in their songs?
Well, I think it takes a while to realize when repetition is working in your favor in your songs. We can write a lot of songs and express our artistic self and not even think about patterns and how to really please the listener's ear. But then we can realize that, hey, patterns, repetition, these are good things for my listener. It
Right,
takes a
right.
while. It takes a while to realize.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, we could have a whole long discussion about pleasing the listener and whether we even want to do that. I do. You do. Lots of songwriters do, but lots of songwriters don't. They don't even want to consider it. But that's a whole other show, I think. I think that repetition is useful because of what you said, because it can please the listener's ear. It gives them an opportunity to in their mind transform a line into a hook. You say it twice and it's a hook. Often, not always, but can be.
Yeah. So much of songwriting and so much of poetry, and they're not the same, but they're related.
Yes,
So
yes.
much of it does rely on repetition, on pattern matching. And we're not just talking about saying the same word twice. Yes, that's repetition, and yes, that's hooky sometimes. But even in the structure of a song, understanding what a verse is and how repeating the verse in its same form is a useful strategy for songwriting.
Absolutely. Repeating a verse's structure, the line lengths, the rhyme scheme, the number of lines, those things, those elements. That's repetition of a kind as well. So you're right. We're not just talking about repeating a line per se, just saying it twice or three times or whatever. We're talking about repetition within the structure as well. Repetition, without repetition, you have no patterns. The
Hmm.
human brain is a pattern recognition machine. That's what our brains are. I mean, whether we like it or not, that's how our brains work. It's how we survive. It's how we navigate traffic. It's how we understand stand-up comedy, sitcoms. There's a situation that is set up, and then comedy is made out of that situation. That is pattern recognition. And in songs, if you want to communicate to your listener, setting up recognizable patterns is one good way to do that. And you can do it in a multitude of ways, but repetition in the structure, repetition in the rhyme scheme, repetition in the lines themselves and the lyrics themselves, all of those things can work in your favor for making a song more understandable, more enjoyable.
Exactly. I was just going to say, it's not just about pleasing the listener. It's not just about the enjoyment for the listener. It is about giving them the tools with which to understand and follow your story and have that emotional reaction that we're diving for when we get to the chorus.
My mother, God rest her soul, my mother who passed away in 2012, she was possibly the least musical person I ever knew in my life. And she said to me, Don't you have enough records?" And I said not in the same voice. I said, "Don't you have enough books?" And she kind of understood then what I was getting at, that every record is different and so forth. But I guess the reason I bring up my mother is because even she, the least musical person that I know or knew, um, would recognize a pattern within a song, though she wouldn't be able to articulate it. She wasn't analytical about music. In fact, she really rejected music in a lot of ways, found it an intrusion. But even so, I think that because what you were saying, I think begs the question: wait, the listener is actually hearing the structure when they're listening? No, I would say 99% of listeners are not. And it's not that's not the point. You don't want the structure to be obvious, but you want the structure to serve the song. You want the structure to get your point across and make it enjoyable and hopefully make the listener want to hear the song again. So repetition is just one of the ways that you can aid in that, in that it helps make a pattern.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the same kind of thing. They may not recognize the pattern overtly, but they do have an expectation. Now, here's the great thing. Through repetition, you can build up this expectation that they've experienced with other songs, but also within your own song. And then you can subvert that expectation. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really great. You can expect them, have them expect that you're going to repeat this line, or you're going to say the same thing twice, and you don't, maybe the third time around. And that can be really delightful to the brain. The human brain's a fascinating thing. It's looking for patterns, but it's also looking for breaks in the patterns. So, if you subvert people's expectations, they're usually delighted by that. On a TV show or a movie where something happens that's unexpected, like truly unexpected, that you've been led to believe is going to happen, and then it doesn't. Then that thing doesn't happen, and everything changes. That's the kind of stuff people talk about, at the water cooler, so to speak, at the proverbial water cooler. That's what they discuss on in forums and so forth. They're talking about, did you see that thing when such and such happened? Well, that was planned, on a TV show. So we have this romantic notion that in a song you can't plan these things, but you can.
Yes, yes, and that kind of surprise doesn't happen without the expectation.
That's right.
It doesn't happen without laying the ground for, okay, I'm going to put you in a position where you have an expectation, where you want something to happen. And then it's probably not a disappointment in any time when it doesn't happen. It's hopefully, if you play your cards right, it's better than matching the pattern. It's better than fulfilling the expectation.
Yeah. Yes, well, it should be, and if it's not, then you should probably go back to the drawing board and figure it out. Yeah. I don't know anybody who writes a song on a drawing board, by the way, but I have gone back to the drawing board myself many times. Yes, repetition is your friend. I think people who are younger or newer songwriters might think that repetition is boring, and of course it can be, but you have to remember your audience isn't as invested in this song as you are. No matter who they are. I mean, when you're performing your song live, or it's being played on the radio, or it's being streamed on Spotify or whatever, or a YouTube video, or you're playing it in a club, your audience, they don't know it as well as you do. So repeating certain lines can be really useful for driving your lyrical message home, but also your melodic hook home. Also setting up the next section. And as we say, setting up the expectation that you're always going to repeat. And maybe you don't the final time around, and it seems that much more serious and that much more important because you didn't repeat at the end, for example.
I like those occasions, especially, in sort of the concluding chorus or the concluding part of the song where suddenly repetition is the unexpected element. If my payoff line is, I'm so lonesome I could cry, well, we could hear that in the chorus 1 and in the chorus 2, but then as the song, reaches its ultimatum and we're feeling like, okay, this is the finale of the song, introducing repetition is breaking the pattern. I'm so lonesome. Yes, I'm so lonesome. Oh, I'm so lonesome I could cry. And suddenly I feel that line even more deeply because we took 2 extra moments to think about the thought, didn't we?
Yeah, it's funny. That's a great example of repetition at the end of a song to sort of delay gratification.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be really useful as well. That's a great example, actually. I used to get annoyed sometimes in some songs where using your example, I'm so lonesome, and in my mind I'm thinking I could cry. And then I'm so lonesome. And I'm thinking I could cry. And then they finally go, I'm so lonesome, I could cry, like that. And I'm like, yes, we know, but that's me. Right? I think generally speaking, that's an effective thing to do, to draw out the ending, to sort of you're not only not landing on the word cry till the very end, you're withholding kind of, but you're also it's not just the word, it's the note as well, and the chord. You're resolving on that last chord, so it's holding back the resolution, and that's pretty cool.
It's savoring that last spoonful of ice cream, taking as long as you possibly can
That's
before
right.
you're left with nothing in the bowl.
Though it does remind me of performers. I've seen performers who veteran performers who are telling you a story about their past, let's say, and how they got to where they are, and they're in front of adoring fans, and they say, there was a boy who, blah 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 blah, who did this and do that, and never dreamed that he'd ever have the opportunity to play for kings and queens, and blah 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 blah, and that boy is. And it's just like, I know, it's you. That boy is me. It's like, yes, I know. So that kind of delayed gratification to me can be irksome, but it's a show busy kind of thing to do.
But we're talking about repetition. So really that story must end with, that boy is, yes, that boy is. Let me tell you, that boy is me.
And of course, if you're going to subvert that repetition or subvert that expectation, you could go, and that boy is, yes, that boy is, and that boy is that guy over there running the spotlight. That'd actually be pretty funny. And
that boy is my drummer, Johnny.
Exactly. Now I gotta go. I think that'd be pretty cool, actually, if that ever happened. Note to our audience: do that. Try that. I will laugh.
But really, speaking back of repetition, how simple can we get with our repetition?
To those people who resist repetition at all, think about this. Your drum beat isn't different every note or every bar. It's the same, or often the same. Boom, ba, boom, boom, ba, boom, ba. It's like your drum beat doesn't have to change. Your bass line might be eighth notes, rung, dun, 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 dun. It doesn't have to, be different. Your chords don't have to change in every bar or every beat or whatever. Obviously, some songs do all of those things, but mostly there are patterns that are established in the rhythm, in the chord changes, in the bass line, et cetera, et cetera. So, why not in the lyrics and the melody as well?
Well, I'd love to jump off what you're saying here, because I think this is a great point to illustrate. If we have a drum beat, boom, ta, boom, boom, ta, and that drum beat doesn't change throughout the song, that might become too much repetition.
Yeah.
But maybe in light of other elements that are changing, it's not going to bother us. If the bass line is rum dum 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 dum, at some point we really were dying for that to change.
Yeah, exactly.
Why is that? Why are we dying for that to change?
Because our brains have recognized the pattern, and our brains want something new. Our brains hunger for something new.
It sounds like a sci-fi movie. Yeah.
The hungry brains.
So we've recognized the repetition, and we've been able to make sense of the repetition, and it's just like being in survival mode. It's helped us avoid the bus coming down the street, so we've survived yet another day as a human being. But we don't want to do it again, and we don't want to do it again and again and again. If it's something that was really tasty when we recognize that pattern, we'll want to do it again later. For now, take me somewhere different.
Yeah, we might even want to use that beat in different songs to if it's a drum beat or the structural pattern. That's the beauty of music, really, is that some parts are interchangeable and can be used to different effect in other ways. That's why a beautiful cover version that takes a song in a major key and puts it in a minor key, for instance, can be so delightful, because you recognize the words and you recognize the movement of the melody, but the melody is suddenly, now there are different notes in there because it's in a different, it's a minor key rather than a major key. So it has a whole different effect, and yet it is still an echo of that previous thing. So yeah, repetition is our friend, but it's a friend that can outstay its welcome.
It can outstay its welcome. You talked earlier about the length of a song. And I often find sometimes I'm surprised when I learn that a song isn't the length I thought it was. There would be a song I'd listen to that would be so satisfying. It would have like a great story. It would have a beginning and middle and end. It would have a point. It would have something that makes me think. It would all be wrapped up so beautifully. And I realized that the song is only 1:45. And yet my experience was that it was a full-length song, and aren't full-length songs 3.5 minutes or 4 minutes? And conversely, I could hear another song of the exact same duration, 1:45, and think, wow, that was 1:45 too long, because it had too much repetition.
Yeah.
If that bass line was dum 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 through the whole thing, and if the chord never changed, and if the beat never changed, that song would feel like it was too long. But I could listen to Stairway to Heaven and not feel like it's a song that's too long for anybody's purposes.
No, it's because it changes from section to section. There are huge dynamic lifts. Stairway to Heaven is often cited as a sort of cheesy example of I don't know, bombastic rock or something, but boy, is it ever well put together. And when I was a kid and it was new to me, it was very, very moving. And I still find the guitar solo section very exciting. Still, 180 years after it was released, it still works for me. And that's because of repetition, but then also breaking those patterns. That's something else. So we should probably talk about patterns in and have some specific examples in another chat.
Mm-hmm.
Our job as songwriters is to convey an emotion or a thought, or both, hopefully. If that emotion that we're conveying is boredom, then we're not doing our job.
But what if that's the name of my song? What if?
Well, I'm sure there are people who have tried that. I bet you could find some songs called Boredom, and and maybe they convey that, but they would be more of a novelty song, I would think. There will be songs that very cleverer songwriters than I will have attempted that and probably done a great job. And ironically, the songs aren't boring, and they're worth a second, third, and 10th and 100th listen. But that would be ironic.
And in another episode, we're going to talk about novelty songs too. So.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Well, I think we need to wrap it up right now. So I would like to thank you and thank the viewer or the listener for paying attention.
Wherever you're consuming this content.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you, Allister. I look forward to talking to you again soon.